Hello and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I'm Deborah Freid, General Manager of Strategic Planning and Innovation. We are here virtually to bring you crucial information about Durham County Government. Our first guest today is Tobin Freid, Durham County Sustainability Manager. She joins us to share exciting information concerning an upcoming climate change project in our region. Mark Lockhart is Durham County's Chief Paramedic. He's been with us just a few months and will join us in our second segment to talk about EMS services and how his team has operated during this pandemic. Let's begin our show. Tobin, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I understand you just celebrated 13 years as Durham County's Sustainability Manager. Congratulations, and can you tell us about your job and what you do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As a sustainability manager, my job is to help Durham County government and our community protect and enhance our environment through the wise use of resources and by reducing pollution. So primarily I work on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and that involves making our buildings more efficient, making our fleet more efficient, creating policies, training our employees, and providing assistance to our community so that they can make these changes as well.
Well, it sounds like a great deal of what you work on is helping the county and our community address climate change. Why is it important for the county to focus on climate change?
That's a really good question. Climate change occurs when certain greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane build up in our atmosphere, and they trap energy from the sun that normally would go back out into space. And what this means is that average temperatures over the globe increase. We see melting ice caps, which raise sea levels. We see changes in weather patterns. It's very disruptive, and it changes really the conditions on this planet that life has evolved to thrive under. So this is really a big global problem. We can't fix it alone, but we need to do what we can here in Durham to do our part, and then rely on other communities to do their part, and hopefully we can affect this really important issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are some impacts of climate change right here in Durham?
Well, a few years ago, I worked with some of my peers in the Triangle to answer that exact question, and we took about a year of work, and it resulted in the Triangle Regional Resilience Assessment. And this shows exactly what the impacts of climate change are on our region, who will be impacted, and which of our infrastructure pieces will be most impacted and how. And what that assessment showed is that the biggest issues here are extreme heat, heavy rainfall that leads to flooding, and then at the same time, extreme droughts and wildfires. And all of this is made worse by our population exploding, so more people are affected by these issues, and we have more land use changes that also make the heat island and the flooding more of an issue as well.
Now, you mentioned urban heat island. What is urban heat island, and why should we pay attention to it?
So because urban areas tend to have more materials that absorb heat, like cement and asphalt and bricks, than rural areas do, they absorb this heat from the sun, and then they keep it longer, and they keep releasing it overnight when other areas are cooling down. So this results in urban areas having much higher temperatures during the day and at night than rural areas, sometimes 10 to 15 degrees higher in maybe a 10-mile difference. So the problem with this is that it affects, of course, people, especially people who have asthma, hypertension, diabetes, the elderly, people who have to work outside. It also impacts our infrastructure like our roads and pipes. So, and people who have to work outside, who are more, they are affected more by these extreme heat. So this extreme heat. So that's why it's important. And actually, the upcoming community health assessment that should be coming out in the next month or two, for the first time ever, we have a chapter on climate change included in this community health assessment. It focuses on the public health issues associated with climate change, and there's a whole section on urban heat island.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to read that. So what is Durham County doing about urban heat issues?
Some of the ways to reduce Urban Heat Island is to plant trees, have more green spaces, use white or reflective roofing on surfaces. So we've been working to do that, including planting trees at public schools and working with the city on other urban forestry projects. So people can do these in their own home, in their own neighborhoods as well. More broadly, we're going to be working on a project this summer in partnership with the Museum of Life and Science, the City of Raleigh, the Museum of Natural History in Raleigh, Activate Good, and the State Climate Office to map temperatures real time across Durham and Raleigh on the hottest day of the year.
Wow.
And this will give us a very detailed idea of exactly what the profile is, where the hottest areas are, and then we'll know where to fix those issues, plant more trees, put in more green space, but also to target education programs and programs maybe to provide cooling centers or fans or something like that to help people who are most affected by this.
So how can people get involved in the Urban Heat Island Mapping Project? Will you need help?
We will need help, absolutely. So I'm really glad you asked that question. We'll need a lot of volunteers the day of the event. It's going to be one of these things where we send out lots of people at one time. They'll have equipment attached to their car, and they drive around on a predetermined route 3 times during that day. So we definitely need volunteers. We'll also have other activities if people can't drive or don't want to drive. There are other activities for people to do. So people can get more information about the project and sign up to volunteer at climate.ncsu.edu/research/UHI. And we'll have a link to that on our website as well, which is greenerdurham.net, if that's easier for people to remember.
Awesome. And we'll, of course, put it on the screen as well. Durham County has a goal of transitioning to run on renewable energy by 2050. What are we doing to achieve this goal?
Transitioning to renewable energy is one of the main ways we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And so I am currently working on a plan to get us to those goals, and I'm expecting that it will be adopted by August. One of the really important parts of transitioning, of course, that we've been working on for decades, which is reducing our overall use of energy. So the less amount of energy we use, the less we have to supplement with renewable energy. So a lot of what Durham County has focused on up till now is making our buildings more efficient, making our wastewater treatment system more efficient, trying to get our fleet more efficient. So those are the things we've done so far, and we have some exciting things coming up as well.
Yep. And we appreciate your leadership on that because, you keep us all informed. And when we're having to buy new things, you're making sure we're making good choices. So that's wonderful. What are some of the strategies that the county might use to increase renewable energy?
Yeah, so a lot of that's going to be in this upcoming plan, and it includes more efficiency. So we're going to be looking at that. I know the county has one of the first policies I worked on when I started here 13 years ago was a high efficiency building policy.
Yep.
And that's been really great. Durham's built a lot of buildings in the last 13 years and renovated a lot of them. And so we really strive to get LEED Gold on our buildings. And we'll be really tightening up that policy. A lot has changed in 13 years. I know the county will be building a new youth home that will be including geothermal heating and cooling system, which will be our first, and that's a really great renewable resource. The plan also specifically talks about putting solar panels on our buildings, working in public-private partnerships to create commercial scale, so very large solar fields that will help to produce renewable energy for us. Switching our fleet over to electric vehicles as more and more of those vehicles become available on the market and become more cost effective. We'll be transitioning away from gasoline and diesel and purchasing more electric. In the short term, we might need to buy more hybrid vehicles, which aren't fully electric, but are still use a lot less gasoline than traditional vehicles do. So it will take some effort, and it's going to take some resources and time and some people learning to do things differently, but I have every confidence Durham County can do this.
Yeah. Well, Tobin, it's obvious that these are ambitious goals and that it will be challenging for the county to meet them on our own. What are some ways you are working at the statewide level to help make progress on these issues?
Yeah, that's really true. The truth of the matter is, even with putting solar panels on all our buildings and even with building large solar fields, we actually can't meet our goals all on our own. We're completely reliant on Duke Energy for our electricity, and what they do really matters. And what happens at
Yeah.
the state level with policies on energy use, building codes, vehicles, transportation, things like that, all matter. So it's really important we engage at the statewide level. So this year, for the very first time, we worked with governments across North Carolina to submit comments on Duke Energy's Integrated Resource Plan, or the IRP.
Yep.
And the IRP is Duke Energy's plan for generating and transmitting energy for the next 15 years. And it's updated every 2 years. And so we submitted this letter along with 10 other local governments across North Carolina that had comments on what we wanted to see in that plan, like increased renewable energy, more energy efficiency programs, considering the input of communities that are most negatively affected by Duke's decision, usually communities of color and low-income customers who are most affected by these decisions. So we really want to make sure that their voices are heard in this process. I've also been working with stakeholders across the state to help Governor Cooper work out the details of implementing his Executive Order 80, and that includes the Clean Energy Plan. So with his leadership and with stakeholders from everything, businesses, universities, other local governments, state government, we have nonprofits that work on environmental and energy issues, developed a clean energy plan that has recommendations on to help the state meet its ambitious greenhouse gas goals, which include reducing emissions across the state 40% below our 2005 levels by 2025. So those are really ambitious, and it's been a lot of fun to work on that with colleagues across the state.
Yep. For the past 13 years. Yes. So how can people get more information? Do you have a website that they can visit to get their answers to their questions?
Absolutely. So my website is greenerdurham.net. And on that site is a lot of information about what Durham County is doing, as well as how businesses can get involved, what individual actions can happen, some of our policies. As I mentioned, links to our Urban Heat Island project, and a lot of other great information. And my contact information is there as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we really appreciate all that you do for our community and our environment. So thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, you'll hear from Chief Paramedic Mark Lockhart. Don't move. We'll see you on the other side.
To every North Carolinian doing the work to keep us moving forward, thank you. You put on a mask to slow the spread and protect those around you. You found creative ways to stay connected to family and friends. You lent a helping hand to a neighbor in need. Let's keep it up, because we're not done just yet. Until enough of us are protected by the vaccine, we need to keep protecting each other.
As a small business, we're looking forward to people being able to come back into the store.
We would love to have everyone come in and shop the way that they used to be able to.
We want to be responsible to not only ourselves, but to people we don't even know.
If folks are going to choose to spend their dollars with us, then the least that I can do is participate in what it takes to vaccinate.
We are really optimistic about the effect the vaccines are going to have. People want to treat themselves. The craft beer movement and the craft food movement can go hand in hand, and it's all about giving yourself something special.
That desire to shop and to get out there in the stores is very strong for a lot of people.
When we do this, we're making a statement that my individual discomfort is not anything to be compared to community safety.
You have a spot. Take your shot.
You have a spot?
Take your shot.
Welcome back to More in Touch. We're pleased to be joined by our Chief Paramedic, Mark Lockhart. It's great to have you today, Mark.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate you having me today.
So please tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background prior to joining Durham County, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, just prior to joining Durham County last year, I was the state EMS director for the state of Wisconsin. I was in that position for just over 2 years. Previous to that, I had spent the majority of my career in the fire service. I retired from the fire service in 2018 as the fire chief in Stafford County, Virginia. Prior to my time in Virginia, I was the fire chief in the suburban St. Louis, Missouri area, and have been in EMS now for 37 years.
Wow, you've got some great experience.
I've been very blessed in my career.
Yeah. So what services does Durham County EMS provide to the community?
Well, Durham County EMS exists primarily to provide emergency medical care to our visitors and our residents. But over the years, the mission has expanded, and so we not only provide that emergency 911 response now, but we also have a very active community paramedic program.
Yeah.
And that program is really designed for us to be able to assist our residents in a non-emergency setting. So with whatever the issue may be, whether it's an issue that has come up after their discharge from the hospital, if it's a preventative issue such as assessing their home for fall hazards, we have community paramedics that will go out and make those visits. They also do a lot of phone call follow-up and just making sure that folks are getting the appropriate resources to help them with their healthcare needs.
Yeah. So what is Durham County EMS working on to improve service to our community?
Well, right now we have taken a little bit of a step back in making sure that the services that we're providing are being provided in the way we want to. So in doing that, what we're trying to do is look at the data from both our emergency call volume as well as with the community paramedic program so that we use the data to make better decisions. The last year, obviously, with the pandemic was a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah.
And the malware attack, so we had a little bit of a hiccup there. But overall, we want to make sure that the decisions that we're making are based on the service needs, the call volume distribution, time of day, day of week. And so we're using the data to look at how that history impacts what we're doing today. With that kind of review completed, then we hope to be able to make some changes so that we're sure that we're addressing the needs of the community in the most appropriate way.
Absolutely. Data is important.
Yes, ma'am.
Take me through a typical day, if there is such a thing, for a member of Durham County EMS.
Well, Durham County EMS team members work at 12-hour shifts typically, and that starts at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We do have what we call peak trucks that work a 12-hour shift, and those come on at 9, and noon, because our busiest time of day typically runs from about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning till about 6 o'clock in the evening. Mm-hmm. So a typical day for them would start with their shift change, where they talk to the off-going crew and find out if there's anything of major concern that happened. They talk about equipment that may have been left at the hospital, supplies that need to be replaced. They do their daily vehicle check to make sure they have all the equipment that they need. And it really kind of depends. I mean, they may not even get through that part of the process before they get their first call of the day.
Yeah.
But right now the service is running just about 4,000 calls a month. So obviously, each day can be very busy. I think one of the things that draws us to the EMS field is that there's no 2 days exactly alike.
That's right.
You'll never have whatever happened on Monday is not going to happen on Tuesday, and it could be an entirely different day. But I think that's also what kind of energizes us, because we never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, but you guys are always prepared.
We are.
Yeah. So what makes Durham County EMS unique?
That's a great question. And I think for me, especially coming from outside of the system, what I have found is it's the people, the dedication and the commitment of these women and men um, is just really astounding. And especially coming in as I did with the pandemic, it's been very interesting to see how they responded to that. And they
Yeah.
have all stepped up. They have addressed the needs. They have worked the overtime shifts. They have done everything that's been asked of them and then some. And so I think when I look at them and I see the clinical competence, the skills, and the knowledge that they're leveraging every single day in this community, I think for me it's the people. I am proud to work alongside them, and I can say I'm hard pressed to show in my career at least where I have seen this same level of dedication and commitment to the provision of EMS.
Now, what impact has the pandemic had on Durham County EMS? And really, how are your people doing?
Well, I think overall they're doing quite well. It obviously has been a very challenging time for them in the amount of calls that we're running, but also in the types of calls that we're running. And for a lot of folks, uh, it involved a significant commitment as far as we were having them work overtime.
Yeah.
We did have 9 of our practitioners who were directly impacted by COVID. They actually tested positive and were out of work for a short time, recovering from that. Overall, as far as the system goes, we had about a 3% drop in our call volume last year. We anticipated that there would be some type of a drop. Primarily because people just were a little hesitant to want to go to the hospital because of COVID.
Right.
And at least what I've learned in making the move is that it's kind of a universal feeling of I don't have it, I don't want it, and I'm afraid if I go to the hospital, I'll get it. But we did see obviously an increase in the number of respiratory breathing difficulty calls, COVID-related symptom calls, I should say.
Yeah.
And so that number has started to drop a little bit. But it did have an impact both on call volume as well as the physical and I think mental toll that it took on our folks. But I'm also pleased to tell you that they're very resilient and they've handled it extremely well.
Absolutely. So where do you see Durham County EMS in the next 3 to 5 years, Mark?
Well, I think as we look at the next 3 to 5 years, obviously, as I said earlier, what we're looking to do is make decisions that are based on the data from our last 3 to 5 year experience. So what we want to do is to make sure that we have our units deployed in the appropriate locations to try to minimize that response time. We're looking at ways that we can recognize some additional efficiencies with the way that we're doing things, whether it's how do we get ambulances in service quicker from the hospitals to making sure that we've got state-of-the-art equipment and vehicles on the road so that we can provide that high level of EMS that folks have come to expect from us. So I think when we look down the road, we look into the future, we want to make sure that those decisions are data-driven, and we want to make sure that this system is running at its peak performance.
Yeah, yeah. So just wondering, do you have enough staff? Do you have vacancies right now?
We do, as a matter of fact. I believe our last count is we have about 20 vacancies in our field operations division. We're in kind of a continual recruiting process. We'll do 3 recruit academies this year. We have one that just started in early April, and then we have 2 more scheduled later this year. And so I would like to get us to the point where we have fewer than 8 to 10 vacancies on record. But as we go through it, again, we have kind of a revolving door in some instances because an organization this large, you know that you're going to have people who will be leaving.
Yeah.
And in our instance, in many cases, they're leaving to go to nursing school, physician assistant school, or even med school.
So we just have to continue to recruit.
Absolutely, and it's an ongoing process. We open our application period. It typically is open for 2 to 3 weeks, and then from the time that period closes until we start bringing folks in is about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and then they go through the actual the testing process, I should say, and then we start that next academy. So we're trying to get it to where it's kind of a continual process, and we've got that mapped out at least through the end of this year.
Very good. So how can people get in touch with you if they need additional information?
Oh, they're absolutely welcome to call our office and ask to speak with a member of our staff. Depending on what their question is, obviously we can connect them with the right person. My phone number here is 919-560-8233. And I'm always happy to talk with members of the community, either about the care they've received, if they have a question about that care, or if they have a comment or suggestion on how we can improve our services.
Well, thank you so much. We've enjoyed chatting with you today, Mark.
It's been a pleasure, Deborah. I appreciate it.
And we just want to thank you and your team for all you do for our residents and our visitors, keeping everybody safe and healthy.
It's an honor and a pleasure for us to serve. Thank you.
All right. Well, that wraps up our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on In Touch with Durham County. Cheers.